Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I'm doing an unhaul. So it seems like every year around this time of year I do some kind of like spring cleaning unhaul. But also this year it has been especially spurred on by the fact that, you know, I am at home more because I'm self-isolating, and so I have been doing a lot of decluttering and just going through everything that I own and seeing what I can get rid of, and that includes books. So I have over 35 books here that I am going to be unhauling. Of course, it will be a while before I can actually like get them out of my house, but they are going to be set aside, they're off of my shelves, and then when I can actually, you know, leave my house and donate them somewhere after all of this has calm down, I will do that. But yeah, so I have a mix of both books that I have read and books that I haven't read. I think I have more books that I have read that I'm going to be unhauling, but I do have a couple of unread books that I decided to take off my TBR because I don't think I'm going to be reading them. So I think I'm going to be starting with the books that I have read and have decided that I'm going to be letting go of. So first of all, I think I'm just gonna rip off the band-aid because I have a bunch of books here that I feel like, you know, are very popular, but I don't think I want them on my shelves anymore, which are the majority of my V.E. Schwab books. So I am going to be getting rid of the Shades of Magic trilogy, which is A Darker Shade of Magic, A Gathering of Shadows, and A Conjuring of Light. I also have City of Ghosts, and I have The Savage Song and Our Dark Duet. And then I also am going to be getting rid of Vengeful. So the only book that I am keeping from V.E. Schwab is Vicious, because that is my favorite one from her. That's the first book that I read by V.E. Schwab and what got me like really excited about her as an author. And I really loved Vicious. I probably will reread it at some point, so I am keeping that one. But I have found that with every other book that I've read by her, I've been a little bit disappointed. Like, her books are always fun, they're very readable, they're just really easy to read, but they're never anything that I really love other than Vicious. So I don't like hate any of these books. They were all fun to read and I enjoyed my time reading them, but I don't see myself ever rereading them, and they take up a lot of space on my shelves. I don't see myself really keeping up with V.E. Schwab's books anymore. I think the only other book that I might try from her in the future is the archived duology, because that one, I feel like I might actually like that one. But other than that, I don't see myself really continuing to pick up V.E. Schwab's books in the future. So I'm letting go of the majority of my V.E. Schwab collection. Next, I have a bunch of old mass market paperbacks that I read, I think probably when I was in high school, and I've just been keeping them around thinking that maybe I'll reread them at some point to see if I still like them. And at this point I've decided that these ones I don't want to reread. I have a lot of other like old mass market paperbacks that I read in high school that I am gonna reread at some point and see if I still enjoy them, but these ones I've decided to let go. So the first series that I have is, what is the series called? I don't even know. The Black Magician Trilogy. There we go. The Black Magician Trilogy. So the first one is The Magician's Guild, the second is The Novice, and the third is The High Lord. I actually haven't read The High Lord. This was on my TBR shelf, but I've read the first two. And I remember enjoying these, but I read them so long ago that I really don't remember anything about the first two books, and I would have to reread them before reading the third book, and I don't remember liking them enough to want to reread them. And also, they just don't sound interesting to me anymore. They don't really sound like something I'm interested in at this point, even though I did enjoy them when I was in high school. So these ones are going to be going. Another series that I have decided I'm not going to be rereading is, man, I don't know what any of these are called, the Dragon Quartet. Okay, so these are two bind-ups of two books. So the first one is the Book of Earth and the Book of Water, and then the second one is the Book of Fire and the Book of Air. And these, I think, are about these like elemental dragons that have been sleeping and somebody has to go and like wake them to save the world or something like that. And the thing is, I didn't really like these the first time I read them, and I don't know why I've held on to them. I mean, I think part of it is just I used to be a lot more like, if I read a book, I felt like I had to keep it. Like I kept every book that I had ever read. But obviously in the last few years, I've gotten much more into unhauling books. And these are just some that I've missed over and over again. Like I keep passing over them or not noticing them when I go through books to unhaul. But this time I saw them and I decided I didn't even like these the first time I read them. I'm not gonna be rereading them. So these are gonna go. Another series of dragon related books are the Half-Blood Chronicles by Andre Norton and Mercedes Lackey. So this is a trilogy that the first one is Elven Born, the second is Elven Blood, and the third is Elven Bane. And these are about, actually I don't even really remember what these are about, but I do remember that they're talking dragons, and I think that there is a girl who was raised by the dragons. I think that her mother died and a dragon found her and then like raised her, and then they start some kind of rebellion. I don't really remember that much about this series. I remember it being very weird. I probably was much too young to be reading these when I did read them. And they're very much like 90s fantasy. I don't know how to explain what that means, but like, yeah, these were published in 91. So yeah, they very much feel like 90s fantasy, but not in like a fun way. There's some 90s fantasy that I love. These were just weird and I don't really like them, and I don't think I'm gonna be rereading them. And then the last one in this category of mass markets that I have is The Goblin Wood by Hilary Bell. And this I remember absolutely nothing about, and I don't remember disliking it, but I remember this being very mediocre and forgettable, and I have forgotten pretty much everything about it. So I'm just gonna be letting this one go because I remember nothing about it, and it doesn't sound like something I really want to read anymore. Then I have a few more books that I have read. The first one is Finnegan of the Rock by Melina Marchetta. This is the first in the Lumitiere Chronicles, and I read this I think 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought it was okay, but I just wasn't really into it, and I just don't feel really interested in continuing the series. If I did ever decide I was going to continue the series, I probably would just listen to it as an audiobook. I don't think that I like this series enough to read it physically. Then I have A Secret History of Witches by Louisa Morgan, and this is one that I mostly have kept just because I love this cover. This cover is just so pretty and very like my aesthetic, but this book was just okay, and it's another one that I'm not going to be rereading. It is like about generations of witches in a family, and you get to kind of see the problems that they go throughout generations and different kinds of persecution that they face and how they hide or protect themselves, and the ways that they use magic and all of that. But it just wasn't, I didn't really like any of the characters in this. I do like, you know, things about generations of families, but this one, none of the characters really stood out to me that much, and it is not one that I'm gonna reread. Then I have 2 books by Moira Fowley Doyle. The first one is All the Bad Apples, and the second is The Accident Season. So I really like Spellbook of the Lost and Found by Moira Fowley Doyle, and I still have that one on my shelf, but these 2 other books by her, I just was very so-so about, or I felt kind of so-so about this one, and I did not like this one. There were just some kind of weird things about this that I was not a fan of, and I'm never gonna read them again, so I think I'm gonna let these ones go. One thing that I am trying to get better about is that if there is an author that I have enjoyed at least one of their books, and I've read other books by them that I don't enjoy, I tend to hold on to all of their books just because I liked the one. And I don't know why I do that, but I'm trying to not do that so much, just because it doesn't make sense to hold on to all of an author's books. If I only like one of the books, just hold on to the one book you like. That seems logical, but for some reason that's not what I do. Anyway, so I'm going to be letting go of these ones to try and just get better at that. And then the last of my read books that I'm going to be letting go of is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This is the UK edition that is very pretty. Like, I love this cover, and it has the little keys on the edges. But I recently read this in March, yes, and was not a fan of this book. I don't know, there are some things that I think that it did well, but mostly it just really is not a book for me, and I accidentally ended up with 2 copies of this, so I still am keeping the 1 copy that I read, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be unhauling that at the end of the year or not, but I definitely don't need 2 copies of it because I did not like this book enough to keep 2 copies, so I am going to be letting go of this version of it. Alright, so now we're going to be getting into the books that I have not read. So these are books coming off of my TBR shelf. First of all, I want to start with some classics because I have 6 classics here. I went through a phase at one point where I really wanted to like read a whole bunch of classics, and I just bought a ton of them used. And I did read some of them, but then there are still some that I did not get to, and I just don't think I'm ever going to get to these ones. So I have a few classics here. First of all, I have 2 Kurt Vonnegut books. I have Cat's Cradle and A Man Without a Country, and I think both of these were given to me. And then I also have Paradise Lost by John Milton. I have Candide by Voltaire, Utopia by Thomas More, and The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. So I don't see myself reading any of these anytime soon, and it's very likely that if I did want to read any of these, I might listen to them as audiobooks, because I think that that would just make it a more enjoyable reading experience. Then I also have a few nonfiction books. The first one is The 5 Dharma Types, Vedic Wisdom for Discovering Your Purpose and Destiny by Simon Chokoisky. And this is one that I think my mom was getting rid of, and I just decided to pick it up to see if it was interesting. But it's not one that I'm going to like read cover to cover. It was more that I just wanted to kind of see what the premise was. So I think I'm going to be letting this one go. And then I have 2 like personality books. Okay, then I have 2 personality books. The first one is What Type Am I? Discover Who You Really Are. And the second is The Enneagram Made Easy. Both of these are by Renee Barron and Elizabeth Weigel. And of the books about personality that I have read, I just really don't like these ones. I don't find them very useful. I never really refer to them or use them or look things up in them. So this one is about the Enneagram, this one is about MBTI, and yeah, I just never use them. And I have 1 poetry book, which is Mind Platter by Najwa Zebian. And this I actually started reading this, and I think the type of poetry just wasn't clicking for me stylistically. I also have 1 anthology, which is Beyond the Woods, Fairy Tales Retold, which is by, of course, various authors because it's an anthology. And this, like, I have had this on my shelf for a very long time. And most of the reason I got this was it was very much a cover buy because I love this cover art. But I actually tracked down, like, the artist for this cover art and just bought a print of this artwork, so I have it on my wall now, and I don't need the book to remind me of this cover art. And even though I do enjoy fairy tale retellings, I have really recently been trying to come to terms with the fact that I don't enjoy short stories overall. Once in a while, I will come across a really good one, but in most cases, I don't really like short stories. I don't like short story collections or anthologies that much. They just never really work for me, and these ones are very, very short. There are a lot of short stories in here. If I'm gonna read a short story, I prefer a longer short story. I just am not a big fan of anthologies, so I'm gonna let this go and just appreciate the artwork that is on my wall. And then lastly, I have 4 books here that Instagram helped me decide to unhaul, I put up pictures of some of the books that I was thinking of unhauling and took polls, and you guys voted on which books I should keep or which I should let go of. So I have 4 here that you guys helped me pick. The first one is The Iron Tree by Celia Dart Thornton. I know pretty much nothing about this book. This is one that I bought used because it was super cheap, and it has the word tree on the cover. That was how I made that decision, and it's probably a good choice to get rid of this. Next we have The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. This one is an adult science fiction, and I have seen some really like rave reviews for it, and then I have seen some really negative reviews for it, especially from some people that I tend to agree with on books. And then I have just read some other reviews on Goodreads about it, that some of the things that people don't like about this seem like things that are gonna really rub me the wrong way. My interest in this has really decreased over time. Originally, I had wanted to read this as part of that science fiction through the decades reading challenge that I started and never finished, because this was the last book that I needed to read for that, and I never did. And I just don't think that I'm going to. I'm really not interested in it anymore. Then I have The Stormcrow by Kalin Josephson. The premise of this sounds very similar to the premise of like Aragon, but with crows instead of dragons. And this is one that I pre-ordered, I think, last year, and then later I was like, maybe I should have held off and waited and like seen reviews for it and stuff, and it just is another one that my interest in it has really decreased over time. I also got some messages from people on Instagram when I was polling about this one. People were telling me that pretty much that it's just very generic, forgettable, and there's nothing really especially interesting or engaging about it. I'm not that interested in it, and people are saying that it's just like very forgettable and generic, so I don't think that I need to read this. And then the last book that I have is Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. This is another one that I pre-ordered because I was like very excited about it, and then the more I heard about it, the more I realized that this probably isn't going to be a book for me. In terms of the premise and the setting of this, I just don't think it's going to be one that works for me. And then this is another one that I have gotten multiple messages about, people saying that like they really don't think that I specifically would like it. So I really appreciate it to hear from you guys that you know my reading taste, and when you're able to tell me like, no, this one really isn't going to like match with your reading taste. So I appreciate that. So those are all the books that I am currently unhauling. To be honest, by the end of this whole like self-isolation thing, there might be more books, because I'm gonna just keep like going through and decluttering like everything that I own. But for now, these are the like 35 plus books that I'm going to be unhauling, and it's making a lot of space on my shelves, which I'm very excited about. And as I said, once everything kind of goes back to normal, or whatever the new normal is going to be, and I'm able to safely leave my house, I'm going to be donating all of these books to the used bookstore that is connected to my local library, and all of the proceeds from that bookstore support the library. So I always love donating books there as a way to support my library. But yeah, so those are all the books that I am unhauling. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!